Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Dadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam devotees. So this morning I'm not really answering a particular question, but just having a discussion with someone the other day. I'm just doing some reflection on that discussion and just speaking out about trying to understand perhaps something that comes up in the unfoldment process of every devotee from time to time, and that's how to reconcile things related to our particular karmic package that we have now and the idea that we are pursuing our absolute and true spiritual identity. So first, there should be some clarity in terms of the siddhanta, in terms of the philosophical conclusions about the nature of the particular body, mindset, and everything that we have in a particular lifetime. So in the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, I believe it is, Karmana Dhaivana Natrena Janto Dehopapatye, Stri Uttapraveshta Pumsam Reta Karanasaya. So Kapila Devan, talking to Devahuti, mentions that from one life to another, the living entities, by their karma, dhaivana, and natrena, means their actual activities and their destiny. So here destiny, dhaivana, natrena, really refers to the culmination of activities performed and desires that one has. The synthesis of those two things produce from one life to another a particular personalized karmic package that the soul, encased in the subtle body, obtains life after life. So let me say that again. So the soul, we know its conditioned nature is that it is enveloped in gross and subtle bodies. When each gross body reaches its time limit, so to speak, and we give up that one body, the subtle body still encases the soul, and it carries the aspirations, the previously performed activities, our karma, and it then enters into the next karmic unfoldment. So it goes into the next life carrying those conceptions, those activities, those desires, and everything else, and it produces exactly a manifestation of the culmination of those things. That becomes the physical, mental condition that every jiva finds themselves in one lifetime after another. Beyond that cyclic activity of the subtle body and our desires and previously performed activities is the foundational element of the nature of considering ourselves something other than our actual spiritual identity. So I'll get into that a little more when I talk about spiritual identity. But essentially, the ahamkara really means I am the karana and karata. Karana means the cause, and karata means the doer. So I am the cause and the doer of the activities that I find myself in a particular karmic dispensation, for lack of a better word. I am the person who creates that. I am the doer. Of course, by Bhagavad Gita, we know that this is a falsehood. This is why this presentation is called, or ahamkara is synonymous or called false ego, because it's a false foundational understanding of who we are. I am neither the doer nor the cause. And this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. What is that verse? Prakriti kriyamanani gunaya kamani savasha ahamkara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. That we think we are the doer and the cause of our existence and activities, but in fact, it's being carried out by the functions of material nature in relation to the karmic package of every jiva. So the jiva is not actually the doer and the cause. When you have this ahamkara, that is the nature of conditional life. Ahamkara means conditioned life, because you need a place where that can be accommodated. It can't be accommodated in the spiritual dimension. And of course, in scripture, there's sort of a metric given just to help us understand that the spiritual world is 3/4 of the creation and the material world comprises 1/4, right? So I don't know if that's an actual mathematical reality or it's to give an indication of the nature of the material world, or Bhagavan's Srishti Leela, his material creation pastime, is simply a small part of his overall existence. That's probably more the accurate analysis of that. At any rate, in that 3/4 or the spiritual dimension, the false identity and false conception can't be accommodated. There are no bodies there that can accommodate us thinking ourselves to be the cause and the doer and the enjoyer, bhoktatva, that we are the enjoyer also. There's nothing in the spiritual world that, there's no forms or anything that can accommodate that false reality. I shouldn't say false reality, that doesn't make sense. That false ideal, right? So the Srishti Leela of Bhagavan, means the creation pastime of Bhagavan, creates a place where that can be played out. So that ahamkara can find its facility to exist in this material creation. So the false ego then becomes a foundation. From one body to another, a particular upadi is given. An upadi means a designation. So that designation is itself the manifestation of your activities from previous lives and your desires. So you come into a particular type of body, in a particular family, in a particular place, with a particular mental and subtle psychological makeup, right? So all of those things, right, then produce an upadi, right? So a contemporary word for that is whatever your intersectionality is, right? There's a contemporary word now. You have an intersection of being this, and this, right? And it has application to social understanding. So, but I'm dealing with the point now, what that intersection is actually is your particular upadi, right? So there's a ahamkara, which is the foundation, and that ahamkara, even beyond that ahamkara, is the foundational thing called avidya, right? So avidya means the lack of knowledge of who I am. Avidya. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya means not having knowledge of who I am, or ignorance. That ignorance then can give rise to ahamkara. Ahamkara gives rise to a particular upadi. Now, whatever upadi you have in a particular life, we identify with that vicariously from the position of the soul. We identify with that and we accept, this is me, this is my mental makeup, this is my physical body, this is etc., etc. Now, when we want to somehow, by great fortune, we get the influence of a spiritual awakening, some way, form, or fashion, right? Not particularly talking about bhakti here, but just any kind of seed of a spiritual awakening. The first thing that becomes questioned is, who am I really? Because at a certain level of either dissatisfaction, frustration, or whatever the motive might be, at some point in this cycle from one life to another, which has been going on since Anadikal, just like in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained, Anadi avidya yuktasya, that the connection with this avidya is anadi, it doesn't have a beginning. So we don't have to search out a historical, well, when did this happen? When did I fall into this ignorance, etc. Bhagavatam clearly says that there is no beginning to this avidya. But when that moment comes when, what is this? Why am I here? And it may be due to suffering, it may be due to inquisitiveness, it may be due to previous impressions in one life's dispensation, somehow or another, there was some kind of spiritual contact. Then it arises in the consciousness or chitta of a jiva. What is this? Who am I? Why am I suffering? Is this life all there is? At that point, then that spiritual sort of inclination starts to prod the jiva to try to make that discovery. And at that point, there arises a initial dichotomy of, well, I feel like I'm this body, I feel like I'm all the things involved in this karmic package, but somehow or another, I know there must be something else. This state is called mati. Mati means the state of deliberation in which the first consideration comes, well, who am I? In Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Sanatan Siksha, when Sanatan Goswami Pad asked the Sriman Mahaprabhu, Kayami, Kenyamai, Jare Tapatrai. Who am I and why am I suffering threefold miseries? That is called mati, when this question arises in the jiva. And then Mahaprabhu in synopsis gives the answer right away. Jivera Sarupoye Krishnera Nityadas. Jivera Tatasta Shakti Ved Abed Prakash. Who are you? Constitutionally, that means your actual nature is you are the das of Krishna. Therefore, like we were using the word earlier, ahamkara, I, right? I, and then we are the doer and the cause. This is our misconception. But actually, Mahaprabhu was saying, by constitution, one sees oneself as das of Krishna. That's the actual identity. Just like ahamkara gives rise to many upadis according to your karma, the concept of I am the das of Krishna under particular spiritual conditions gives rise to the real designation with specificity of what kind of das you are. Beginning all the way from Atma Ananda means I'm just not the material body, to the realization of Brahmananda. I feel myself to be part of the spiritual energy of Bhagavan. I don't have a particular or specific identity, but I'm part of the overall spiritual energy. This is called Brahmananda, and it's related to those who have merged is always the word we use, but Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan Prabhu and our acharyas have been very clear. The jiva cannot actually merge into Brahman. That's why it is called sayuja. Yuja means to bind something. Sa means like along with. So we're existing along with the spiritual effulgence of Bhagavan, the Brahma Jyoti, and there's a sense of not having any specific identity spiritually and no material designation that gives rise to a feeling of Brahma Ananda, because that effulgence is full of bliss potency, right? So let me back up one step here. In Atma Ananda, there's simply the absence of misery. It is called Dukkha Pratiyogito. I've explained this on so many different tapes. Jiva Goswami Pad and Paramatma Sandarbha has explained this. So this Dukkha Pratiyogito, the absence of misery, is the state of not having identification with the material body or the material world. I am the Atma, I'm not this material body, right? I am a spirit soul. But that state doesn't give rise to actual spiritual enjoyment. It gives rise to the absence of material misery. But Brahmananda, or existing in the effulgence of Bhagavan, though there's no specific spiritual identity, there's the experience of the bliss feature within the effulgence of Krishna's body. So that is called Brahma Ananda, right? One taste, Brahmananda. The beauty and the bliss of being associated with the effulgence of Bhagavan's body. Now, beyond that is the recognition of the difference between the jiva and Bhagavan, which gives rise to the fact that Bhagavan has an identity and I have a separate eternal identity. Therefore, there's a relationship. that gives rise to a feature of Dasatwa that is, I am the servant and Bhagavan is the master. In that sense, the first indications of what is called Seva Ananda arise. Bhagavan is my master, I am the servant, I want to serve. That is called Seva Ananda. That is superior to the bliss tasted in Brahmananda. Then, in the idea of Sevananda, according to the particular manifestation of Bhagavan, whether it is Aishwarya feature of Bhagavan, like Sri Narayan, even realization of the Paramatma or Antayami, or Narayan, or any of the Narayan Vilas Murtis, right? Or any of the Lila avatars in which Aishwarya is present, Narasimha Bhagavan, Kurma Bhagavan, Varaha Bhagavan, right? That mood of Seva Ananda is very, very tasteful. Beyond that, there's the specificity of the mood of serving Bhagavan in a feature like Sri Ramchandra Bhagavan. Still, there's a mixture of Aishwarya and Madhurya, because in service to Sri Ram, you have the possibility of Gaurava Sakya Ras, for instance, and Vatsalya Ras is present also there. You understand? So Gaurava Sakya Ras means like the feeling that Babijin had towards Ram, or Sugriva had towards Ram. The feeling that Hanuman has towards Ram is a pure Dasya Ras. Ram is my master, I am his servant. Babijin, Sugriva, others, they had a kind of friendship, but understanding he's Bhagavan. And of course, Kausalya, Sumitra, and Kaikeyi, they had motherly affection towards the Lord, so Vatsalya Prem is present there. So if you unfold that even more, and the ideal of your worship is Shri Krishna, especially Shri Krishna in Braj, it gives rise to a fullness of specificity of an identity in Seva Ananda, like Sakya Rasa with Visramba means intimacy, also Vatsalya Rasa, but this Vatsalya Rasa absent of any Aishwarya, or that Aishwarya is covered by Madhurya or sweetness. Then it gives rise also to Madhurya Rasa, meaning gives rise to the idea of lover and beloved beyond the restrictions of Dharma like it existed in Ram Leela. So in this way, the Ananda grows in each different level of experience. So in our spiritual identity, this whole realm is opened up. But my original point in this discussion was in the beginning, because of the years and years since time without beginning of impressions of material identity and relationship to our particular karmic package in terms of this body, then sometimes the dichotomy arises of, when we're in the stage of unfoldment, that is, of how much affirmation we give to being the material body and how much affirmation we give to being our spiritual identity. And sometimes the balance of those things can become a little confusing. Of course, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakurpad, in writing one grantha, one book, Madhurya Kandambini, has done an excellent job in describing this psychological phenomenon of unfolding in bhakti, because he describes various stages that you go through in which that dichotomy exists. Like, I'm still having so much impression from my upadis and my ahamkara coming from material existence. At the same time, I'm genuinely trying to unfold by sadhana and a sangha of Vaishnavas. I'm trying to unfold in spiritual life. So then that dichotomy arises of how much affirmation we give to either side, right? So what I mean by affirmation is, and this is where the conversation I had comes into play, because the devotee was speaking about something that came up on a podcast that I did recently, and some responses that came, well, two responses actually that came, and they were both about the idea of not seeing a difference between the physical body and therefore social issues and social justice issues related to it and our spiritual identity. On the podcast, I made the point that it's almost like a spiritual schizophrenia to have a situation where you in one sense identify strongly as being a particular body with a particular race, gender, color, all these different things. And at the same time, you have aspiration that I want to be a spiritual identity. So for instance, we're doing Sadhan Bhajan every day. And what is that Sadhan Bhajan for? The essence of our Sadhan Bhajan life is hearing and chanting, especially the chanting of Sri Nam. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written, More Siddha Deha Diye Krishna Pasi Rake Giya, E Deera Kare Sarvanash. That, oh Harinam, please give me my Siddha Deha and bring me in relation to Krishna. And at the same time, destroy Edera Save Karanash, destroy this present material conception. So if you are chanting Harinam and doing Sadhan Bhajan with all the other elements, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, like doing Thakurji Seva, all these different things, and you're saying prayers every day in affirmation of pursuit of a spiritual identity, then I'm not understanding how it would be possible to then reaffirm that I am a Latina female, a black male, a Indian transgender person, to just that complete myriad of various upadis, and you sort of identify with that strongly. At the same time, you're trying to break that, right, to understand what is my spiritual identity. So that could lead to a kind of spiritual schizophrenia, or it can lead to an artificial synthesis of those two things. So now the question becomes, well, Mukunda, if you're saying that, what do you do? Because there is a certain amount of apparent reality that I have a body, I have a particular designation in that body, etc. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clearly spoke this to Raghunath Das Goswami, and I've spoken it many times. Antara Nishtakara Baya Lokya Vyavyahar. Antara Nishtakara means in your inner recess, means in your heart, your sacred space, your Hridaya Mandir, your heart temple. Only the affirmation of my spiritual identity through the practice of unfolding a spiritual life should be allowed entrance there. In my psychological makeup, I accommodate that there's the material world, and I exercise prudence and Vyavyaharic consideration. Vyavyahara means dealing with the material world in an appropriate way. If you're a father and a husband, and etc., you have to do responsible things. If you're a mother, you do the things that are responsible for motherhood. If you are a child and you have certain responsibilities, you carry them out, right? If the weather outside is of a certain nature, you dress and deal with that environment appropriately. So it's a matter of kind of having separation, but at the same time, understanding what that separation is, so that it doesn't cause spiritual schizophrenia. I am a soul that has a body. My god uncle, Bhumi Bhakti Babu, he mentions this a lot, and it's a really profound point. I am a soul, I have a body. I'm not the body. The particular body I have, I've already discussed how it has come about. So now, dealing with that, realizing that, I'm simply going to act according to that understanding. I have a body. That body has certain designations acquired by my karmic portfolio. I'm going to responsibly act in a way that I carry out the duties of that body, but not allow it to then infringe upon the sacred space of my Hridaya Mandir and my unfoldment into my actual identity in my Siddharup, my perfected spiritual form and relationship to Bhagavan. So just like oil and water, if you put them in a container and you shake them to try to force a synthesis of those two things or merging of the two, it will never happen. As soon as you put it down, they'll separate again. And some people spend a whole lifetime trying to shake the oil-water nature of spiritual reality and material reality and force it to come to a synthesis. It won't. The material energy and the spiritual energy are two different things. The spiritual energy is certainly the root of material energy, but they are two separate things. They will not have synthesis. So we have to find the reality, absorb ourselves in reality, and then the false nature or representation of that reality, or just the material energy, because not the material energy is false, it's our relationship and conception of it that's false. So naturally, just like with the oil and water simile, if you put the container down, water will take its natural place and oil will take its natural place. And a natural organic reality of those two things in that same container will present itself. So if we stop shaking the container of our consciousness to try to forcibly synthesize material and spiritual, and simply concentrate on the reality, the spiritual reality, naturally the element of material life will take its place in a proper way and won't interfere with our true spiritual unfoldment. So I wanted to bring that up because I had a conversation with someone. It wasn't a question really, it was just a conversation. Nor was there a plan for me to answer this on Facebook Live or anything, but I'm just bringing it out as a discussion because there is, to a greater degree than I've seen before, it seems like sometimes an attempt to try to do that forced synthesis thing with material and spiritual energy. And that also that idea of simultaneously being in pursuit of pure spiritual identity and at the same time affirming my material bodily designation, which it's not tenable to me to reaffirm my material identity over and over again through various things, and at the same time have effective pursuit of my true spiritual identity. I have to let the natural state of material existence be where it is, and be prudent and vyavyaharik, as Mahaprabhu said, bayalok vyavahar, be prudent and appropriately deal with the material, including my upadis and so forth, and I have to try to give up this ahamkara and accept the real identity of dasatwa and pursue the specificity of that dasatwa in regards to bhakti yoga. Okay? So I meant for this to be short because I'm also in the process of trying to get ready for the noon offering here. All right, Dhanavad, Pranam, devotees, Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha, Vipashinabhyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.